The Sistine Chapel. Originally known as the Capella Magna, Great Chapel, the chapel takes its name from Pope Sixtus IV, who had it built between 1473 and 1481. Since that time, the chapel has served as a place of both religious and functionary papal activity. Today, it is the site of the papal conclave, the process by which a new pope is selected. The fame of the Sistine Chapel lies mainly in the frescoes that decorate the interior, most particularly the Sistine Chapel ceiling and the Last Judgment, both by Michelangelo. During the reign of Sixtus IV, a team of Renaissance painters that included Sandro Botticelli, Pietro Perugino, Pinturicchio, Domenico Ghirlandaio, and Cosimo Rosselli, created a series of frescoes depicting the life of Moses and the life of Christ, offset by papal portraits above and trompe-l'oeil drapery below. Between 1508 and 1512, under the patronage of Pope Julius II, Michelangelo painted the chapel's ceiling, a project which changed the course of Western art and is regarded as one of the major artistic accomplishments of human civilization. He returned and, between 1535 and 1541, painted the Last Judgment. The fame of Michelangelo's paintings has drawn multitudes of visitors to the chapel ever since they were revealed 500 years ago. After its completion of the structure, the chapel was decorated with frescoes by a number of the most famous artists of the High Renaissance. The Sistine Chapel has maintained its function to the present day and continues to host the important services of the papal calendar. The first stage in the decoration of the Sistine Chapel was the painting of the ceiling in blue, studded with gilt stars, and with decorative borders around the architectural details. This was entirely replaced when Michelangelo came to work on the ceiling in 1508. Of the present scheme of frescoes, the earliest part is that of the side walls. They are divided into three main tiers. The central tier of the walls has two cycles of paintings, which complement each other, the life of Moses and the life of Christ. They were commissioned in 1480 by Pope Sixtus IV and executed by Domenico Ghirlandaio, Sandro Botticelli, Pietro Perugino, Cosimo Rosselli and their workshops. They originally ran all round the walls, but have since been replaced on both end walls. Michelangelo's frescoes. Michelangelo was commissioned by Pope Julius II in 1508 to repaint the vault, or ceiling, of the chapel. The work was completed between 1508 and late 1512. He painted the Last Judgment over the altar. Between 1535 and 1541 Michelangelo was intimidated by the scale of the commission, and made it known from the outset of Julius II's approach that he would prefer to decline. He felt he was more of a sculptor than a painter, and was suspicious that such a large-scale project was being offered to him by enemies as a setup for an inevitable fall. Michelangelo created a flat wooden platform on brackets built out from holes in the wall, high up near the top of the windows. Contrary to popular belief, he did not lie on this scaffolding while he painted, but painted from a standing position. Michelangelo used bright colors, easily visible from the floor. On the lowest part of the ceiling he painted the ancestors of Christ. Above this he alternated male and female prophets, with Jonah over the altar. On the highest section, Michelangelo painted 9 stories from the Book of Genesis. The Pope offered to allow Michelangelo to paint biblical scenes of his own choice as a compromise. After the work was finished, there were more than 300 figures. His figures showed the creation, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and the Great Flood. The Last Judgment. The Last Judgment was painted by Michelangelo from 1535 to 1541. The work was designed on a grand scale, and spans the entire wall behind the altar of the Sistine Chapel. The painting depicts the second coming of Christ on the Day of Judgment as described in the Revelation of John, chapter 20. High on the wall is the heroic figure of Christ, with the saints clustered in groups around him. At the bottom left of the painting the dead are raised from their graves and ascend to be judged. To the right are those who are assigned to hell and are dragged down by demons. The Last Judgment was an object of a bitter dispute between Cardinal Carafa and Michelangelo. Because he depicted naked figures, the artist was accused of immorality and obscenity. A censorship campaign, known as the Fig Leaf Campaign, was organized by Carafa and Monsignor Cernini. The Pope's Master of Ceremonies Biagio de Cesena said, "It was most disgraceful that in so sacred a place there should have been depicted all those nude figures, exposing themselves so shamefully, and that it was no work for a papal chapel but rather for the public baths and taverns."